a lot of the things that I'm talking about are changes that we've made in the last few weeks. So I introduced a lot of them before half term, and we're trialling them at the moment. So far so good, but I'm going to explain what we're doing and why we're doing it. A lot of it comes from a book called The Battle Hymn of the Tiger Teachers, which some of you might have seen, which is based on the Michaela School in London. So hopefully, if you need any more information, that will clarify it for you. So there are sort of three strands to the changes that we've made. We're thinking about knowledge organisers as a basis for our curriculum, and I'll explain those in a second. Marking and feedback, because a lot of frustrations in terms of marking and feedback in English. It takes an awful lot of time, and it's not always consistent in terms of how it benefits the students. So we've done quite a lot of work on that. And we've also made some changes to home learning as well. So the first thing was to kind of think about what we actually wanted from the marking, and obviously the most important thing was to make sure that the students were making some progress, that there was some point to us spending hours and hours just sitting down, writing well done and targets and things like that. So this is what we have come up with. Our main priority being that we want them to learn something from what we're doing, obviously. So we want regular feedback to the students. We wanted to free up some teacher time so that we weren't spending so much time marking, but we were actually thinking about how we were going to use that marking in the classroom, so we had more time for planning. We wanted to make sure that the students were a little bit more independent, because they seemed to be sort of relying on us to correct all of their spelling mistakes and things like that, which wasn't really very helpful. And obviously we needed to make sure that we had relevant data for the collection at the end of each term. So we started off thinking about the knowledge-based curriculum, and the first thing with that was our knowledge organisers. You can't see that obviously, but a knowledge organiser is basically, for most of our Key Stage 4 classes, either a one-sided A3 sheet or a double-sided A3 sheet, generally quite small font, but it's the primary things that we want the students to learn over that unit. And the idea is that we give them that knowledge organiser at the beginning of the unit, and everything that we do over the next half term refers back to it. So the home learning will be for them to self-quiz and to learn the things on the knowledge organiser, but also activities that we do in the classroom are based on that as well. And every week the students would get a knowledge test. So the knowledge tests are only 10 marks, so usually it's 10 one-mark questions, and students will mark those themselves. So in terms of our marking, it's minimal, and we then go back over those in order to fill in any gaps and anything that they've not understood. Back to that one again. Right, then there is the marking that we're doing every 2 weeks, which is the main sort of point that I'm going to come to in a second, which has changed a lot for this half term. And our end of unit core assessments are staying the same, so we've not changed those at all. That's basically a GCSE style assessment that the students do at the end of the half term, and that's what informs our on track 4 grade. But our main focus has been our formative assessment. So we've always tried to do an assessment every 2 weeks, just a short assessment, formative, how much have they learnt over the last couple of weeks, and how much more do they need to know. So that has stayed the same. It's 20 minutes of writing, and that now is the only thing that we mark within that 2-week period. So we just look at the 20 minutes, and they'll have a success criteria before they start writing, which will inform our marking afterwards. So that has to be planned in beforehand. That is obviously the skeleton, the bare bones of what a medium term plan might look like. So in each week you would expect to have a knowledge test based on the organisers. There'll be a formative assessment every 2 weeks, and then there'll be a whole lesson that's spent on the feedback from the marking and the upgrade. So the marking is probably where the biggest change and the biggest wins have come so far for the teachers. The students probably get more from the feedback, but for us this was a big win. So our formative marking now takes half an hour instead of about 2 hours, which is what it used to take. We're armed with a highlighter and sometimes a pink pen or purple pen as well, but the highlighter is the most important thing, and we're writing virtually nothing in the books. Okay, we're mainly highlighting, so we're highlighting errors, and we're making notes. Now at the moment this is under review, we're all experimenting with different things, but this is basically my tracker, my marking book tracker, so it's a mess, it looks quite scrappy, but basically every time you've changed colour, you can see changes in colour, that'll be a different time that I've marked this class's work, and within my notes here I'll have put down the spellings that many of the students have got wrong, so there might be something that 2 or 3 of them got wrong, or there might be perhaps even some subject terminology or something like that probably should have been in there, but they weren't spelling correctly, that I might just sneak into my spellings. So I'll end up with about 8 key spellings. I'll have probably a number of key points that they need to learn that I need to go back and reteach. And by the time I've finished the pile of books, I'll have filtered that down to just 2 key points that I want to reteach in the next lesson. And I'll also record in there names of students that have done particularly well, anybody that deserves merits, or any concerns that I've got as well. So that's my tracker, but in the student books all I've got is highlighting. So there's very little else, unless there's something I really feel I need to intervene with in that. Okay? Right, the feedback lesson. This is probably the most important part of it. We found that when we were marking before, we'd spend a couple of hours marking. We'd give students 15 minutes at the beginning of a lesson to use their green pen, correct their spellings, act on any questions that we'd put in the margins or anything like that, but it wasn't really addressing the problems that they'd had in quite the way that we wanted it to. So we now spend a whole lesson on the feedback. So we'll start by displaying the spellings that we've collated, and the students have to write down the correct spellings. They might spend a couple of minutes then trying to learn those spellings. Sometimes they use the whiteboards and things like that to do that. And then we put all of that away and we test them on those words. And if they get any of those words wrong, then they have to then try and learn them ready for the next week. And we try and make sure that we test them again within a few lessons. We also have SPAG lessons with year 7 and 8, so those words would then be fed into the SPAG lesson as well. Often with year 7 and 8 we've found that there's patterns and things like that with the spelling, so it gives us a chance to address those with the students. Then the next part of the lesson, we might praise some of the students. We might use the visualiser to show some of the work that we saw that was particularly good, where students had met particular parts of the success criteria. And then would reteach the areas that we thought were really key in terms of helping students to make progress. And that would take various forms. Sometimes we're using modelling for that, sometimes we're using the visualiser a little bit more, and sometimes we're introducing some new material if we need to perhaps do it slightly differently. Once we've done that, then the students upgrade their work. So they'll then have another between 10 and 20 minutes working silently again to upgrade the work that they did in the first place. Same success criteria, but a real focus on the 2 areas that we thought were an issue, and obviously the spelling needs to be correct in this particular one as well. So they've got time to upgrade. They're doing it in silence, which gives us time to go around and speak to any students where we thought that maybe they need a little bit more input. And then at the end of the lesson, we spend some time either doing self-assessment or peer assessment, depends on what it is, which is more advantageous. So for the self-assessment, what we'd get them to do is annotate to show where they'd met the success criteria, and where they'd applied those things that they didn't do last time from the 2 key learning points. And it's pretty much the same if they do it peer assessed, but it does depend on the activity. So in the feedback lesson, most of the time what we're doing is focusing on skills, and then the knowledge tests and things are mainly focused on the subject knowledge that we need to know over that half term.